Well, we are taking up today employees compensation insurance, or in most popular terms, you can say workman compensation insurance. So, this is one product of liability section. This has nothing to do with engineering. This is one product of the liability section because this is a liability on the employer, liability on the principals. And if you can confirm the voice is clear and the presentation is visible? Okay, good. So, the Employees Compensation Act 1923 is one of the important social security legislation. Now, if we say this act is a social security legislation, what does it mean? That means this policy is specially designed for the purpose of upliftment of the social workers. You can say the laborers, the employees, or the workmen. So the main aim of this policy is to provide financial protection to workmen and their dependent in case of accidental injury by means of payment of compensation by the employers. If you want to understand, I will take you to the background of the policy. Earlier, this act is more than 100 years old. First of all, because this Workman Compensation Act 1923, today this is 2024. So this is 101 year old. And at that time when this act was formulated, there was no law to favor the workman to the employees. If any workman or the labor or any employee died during the working hours, employers were giving nothing to them because no protection was there, no social security was there, no law was there. And normally this kind of incidents were taking place in factories and industries. So gradually the awareness came among the masses of the workers because when the Lal Janda Union or the Communist Party came into the action, they started fighting for the rights of the workers. And then after some time the government, British government think that there should be some social security legislation for the protection of them. And then this act was formulated, which is known as the Workman Compensation Act 1923. Since then, this act is continued. And this act is continued with the little modifications or amendments from time to time. But they act with the same spirit of providing the social security to the weaker sections or to the workmen or to the laborers as fulfilling this object. Now the important findings of this act is that this act now is not known as the Workman Compensation Act or the Workman Compensation Insurance. Now this name has been changed as the Employees Compensation Act 1923 and the insurance is also changed as the Employees Compensation Insurance. So this is the first finding. Second one is the limits were revised time to time. Means whenever an employee meets with an accident which led to fatal, means deathly, the employer or the principal or the factory owner is liable to pay the compensation. So the compensation amount is arrived at by applying the age and his wages. So as per recent amendment, the wage level is increased to limit of rupees 15,000 per man. When the act was formulated, that time the wages was in hundreds. Then it was revised after a long time, it was revised to 4,000 rupees. And again after a couple of years it was revised to 8,000. And today, since 2020, the limit has been increased to 15,000 rupees per month for the workmen or for the laborers. So the section 17 of this act says the employer, the workman or the laborer has a right to recover compensation from the contractor instead of the principal. What does it mean? If a worker is engaged by a contractor, he has no right to claim it from the principal. He will claim it from the contractor because he is working for him or the contractor. Contractor may be working for anybody. So this act provides and gives a legal right to the worker to claim the compensation. Now, as on date, if anybody asks from you the workman compensation insurance or the employee's compensation insurance, don't get confused because both are same things. The only change is the employee's compensation insurance is the new name of the workman compensation insurance policy. Now the object of the act is very specific because this Employees Compensation Act 1923 is to provide relief to the workman or to his dependents if workman gets dead or disabled due to accident arising out of and in the course of employment. This phraseology, this terminology, arising out of and in the course of employment is most important. Why? Because if any accident or death or disability or injury has caused out of working hours, means when no work is assigned to by the employer or the contractor, if that time the accident happens, the employer or the contractor has no liability. Say suppose a factory worker on the holiday, that is Sunday, went to some picnic and there he suffered some accident and he lost his legs. He is working for the factory owner. Now when the legs are gone or disabled or amputated, he is useless for the factory owner. For this reason he cannot claim the compensation from the factory owner because this incident has not taken place during the course of employment. This is out of the course of employment. So this phrase is most important to cover the liability. He is a workman, he is a worker, he suffered an accident, but out of the course of employment. There is no legal right. He cannot claim any compensation from the employer. He cannot ask for any amount from the employer as compensation through even the Commissioner of Workmen Compensation Court. They will also deny because no employer will confirm that he was on duty. So under what circumstances the accident can happen during the course of employment? Maybe because of the personal negligence of the employer, personal negligence of the worker or employee himself, personal negligence of the fellow employee, breach of statutory regulations or called Factory Act or Industrial Act or even labor laws, failure to provide safe place of work by the employer. So under these circumstances, there could be any incident of accident which may cause or which may result into the death of the worker or the disability of the worker or the injury of the worker. So all these reasons gives a legal right to the worker to claim the compensation from his employer or the contractor. Now what is important is accident. Means it should be accidental. Any event which is neither expected nor designed is called accident. You cannot plan any accident at any time. It is always unplanned, unexpected, undesigned, and in the course of employment. That indicates the time when the injury is caused. Even if it is caused out of the working hours, but if the workman was assigned some duty by the employer or by the contractor, then it happens, the liability is covered because he was on duty. But out of employment refers and establishes the casual connection between the injury and the employment. Means it has no connection with the employer. So what is the employer's liability in fact? The liability of the employer is to compensate the workman if he has suffered any accident during the working hours arising out of and in the course of employment. Only these liabilities are covered. Death, permanent total disablement, permanent partial disablement, temporary disablement, whether total or partial, or who has contracted any occupational disease. Mind one thing, in this coverage you will not find the medical expenses. That means medical expenses are not covered. Only these 4-5 risks are covered. Death, permanent total disablement, permanent partial disablement, temporary disablement, total or partial, and occupational disease. Some companies provide occupational disease as the inbuilt coverage, some provide as an add-on coverage. But otherwise, this coverage is uniform to all the general insurance companies of India because this is as per the law, act, statutory. This is not the policy designed by the companies themselves. This is the policy which is introduced in compliance to the legal provisions. So this is uniform. There may be difference in the pricing and add-on covers. So now if you are selling this policy to anyone, the customer may ask only 2 questions. And only on those questions the entire policy is dependent upon. The first one, how you will calculate the premium of the policy. And the second one, at the time of any accident, how you will calculate the amount of compensation. So these are the 2 important aspects on which the entire policy as well as the act is based on. Because both are different. As compared to other general insurance policies, both are different. Pattern of calculating the premium as well as compensation is different. And both are legal. So let us see the first part, how the premium will be calculated. So to calculate the premium of the employee's compensation insurance policy, you need 4 things. And you need all the 4 things. Nothing can be left out. All the 4 things means 1. Number of employees or worker or labor. 2. Salary of these employees per month. Salary or wages. It may be a per day base. Period of insurance in months. Maybe the employer is seeking the contractor or employer are seeking the policy for 6 months or 8 months as per requirement of the project. And nature of work. What is the project? What is the work? It could be anything. Even the shopkeeper can take this policy for his workers. Factory owner can take the policy for laborers. A contractor can take the policy for those unorganized laborers which he is collecting every day. So all the 4 things are required. Number of workers, salary of these workers per month, period of insurance and nature of work. So suppose I want this policy from you and I am providing all the 4 informations. Number of workers, salary of worker, period of insurance and nature of work. Then how would you calculate the premium? So the method says multiply the first 3 things. Number of employees, salary of the employee per month and period of insurance. First into second into third. And when whatever sum comes, apply the rate as per the tariff according to nature of work. Nature of work means what project is there, what work is there, to whom the employee or worker is working, what is the nature of duty. Rate will be applicable according to that nature of work. So now the important question is, when you have got all the 4 informations, how you will calculate the premium? So premium will be calculated according to the rate applicable as per the nature of work. And this nature of work is illustrated in the tariff. Say suppose this is the tariff. Workman compensation tariff. Basic rates. These are the trade or businesses, means nature of work. This is rate per milli, per thousand. Endorsement number applicable and classification number. So now for example, I am a contractor, or say I am an owner of the farm. I have a farmhouse, I have 20 workers who are engaged in farming. I know at any point of time if there is any accident, the workers may suffer any kind of injury, death or disability if it happens during the working hours. So in that case, I have to pay the compensation out of my pocket because this is a heavy liability as per the Act. The Commissioner of Workmen Compensation will have to pursue the award as per the provisions of the Act. And that award is calculated in such a manner that neither 1 rupees can be reduced nor 1 rupees can be added to that. There is a legal liability that has to be paid, that has to be honored. There would be no appeal against that order unless I pay it. So I am a literate man, I know this fact. So I will definitely prefer to take a policy to protect them. And the liability is transferred to the insurance company in lieu of certain amount of premium. Now the important question is, when I came to you for seeking a policy, I provided you all the information that number of employees are 20, wages of the employee, I am paying 10,000 to each, period of insurance, 1 year I went the policy. So you multiplied first to second to third, and then nature of work you asked. I said they are all engaged in farming. Means agriculture farm is there. So you refer to your tariff, you find that the rate applicable to the agricultural farm is 5.85 per milli. So whatever sum came here, you just multiplied it and you applied the rate. So premium is there. Means premium calculation is very simple, but unless you have got all the 4 details, you cannot calculate the premium. And every component of these 4 parts is playing a lead role. Because number of workers is important, wages or salary to these workers is important, period of insurance is also important. So when all the 4 components are there, premium calculation is very simple. You can take another example. Suppose I have a factory. I am owner of the factory and manufacturing the aerated water. Now in that aerated water factory, suppose 200 workers are there. Some are skilled, some are unskilled. So for the skilled laborers, I am paying 15,000 per month. Unskilled, I am paying 10,000. But I need the policy for all the 200 laborers to cover the risk. Because anything can happen to anyone on any day, at any point of time. Ultimately, the legal liability would be on me. So why should I shoulder this responsibility? I will transfer this responsibility to the insurance company by taking the insurance policy and after paying the little amount of premium. So I want the policy for that. I invited you and gave the detail of all the 4 components. 200 workers are there. As far as wages or salary is concerned, I am paying 15,000 per month for 50 skilled workers, 10,000 for 150 unskilled workers. Policy is required for 1 year. Nature of work is I am manufacturing the aerated water. This is the nature of work. All are engaged in that process only. So when you refer to the tariff, you find that the rate applicable per the tariff is 15.10 per thousand. You applied that rate to the sum resulted from the multiplication of 1 into 2 into 3. On that you will apply the rate of 15.10 and the premium is calculated. Simple. Take one or more example. Suppose I am running an institution or some aerospace club where I am giving the training to the pilots. My trainer is giving training to the pilots, and once they are trained, they are engaged in flying the helicopters, airplanes, or drones, or any kind of air device. So I hired a batch of 40 candidates. They are under training for say 6 months. But they are all my employees. I am paying them this stipend during this training period. But I know the job is very risky. Anyone can die. Because the process of learning to fly any air device is very difficult. So I want the policy coverage for them. I invited you. You asked all the details of 4 components. I provided you the detail. What detail? 40 workers or 40 employees. Salary 15,000 per month, fixed stipend. That is the wages. Period of insurance 6 months only. On multiplication, you applied the rate as per your tariff or rate. And the rate says pilots and employees who may at any time fly any air device, the rate applicable is 121.60 per thousand. So you applied the rate and the premium is there. So the simple calculation of premium, basic premium is there as per the tariff rate, because the tariff rate is applicable as per the nature of work. But after calculating the basic rate, there can be some extensions. So we provide 3 extensions to this policy. First of these 3 is medical expenses. This is most important. Why? Because I highlighted in the beginning that the medical expenses are not covered. What is covered? You can see again. Death, permanent total disablement, permanent partial disablement, temporary total or partial disablement, and the occupational disease. Occupational disease again depends upon the insurer to insurer. So we would always advise every buyer to take the add-on cover of medical expenses, because this is required. When you are selling this policy to any contractor or employer or the principal or the factory owner or any shopkeeper, whenever you are selling, must ask them that select medical expenses as an add-on cover, because this will provide the coverage for medical, surgical and hospital expenses, including cost of transport to hospitals incurred by the insurer. And this is optional, but on additional premium. Limit can be selected by the proposer. If the limit is selected only 5,000 rupees per worker during the policy period, only 30% premium is required, that is minimum 80 rupees per person. But if he is selecting 5 lakh rupees or 2 lakh rupees, premium would be high. 2 lakh, 95% subjective premium, 275 rupees per person. 5 lakh, 650 rupees per person. Or even the provision of unlimited expenses is there. If the contractor says, I will not bear even a single rupees for medical expenses if anything happened to my worker, insurance company has to pay. Okay, we cover that liability. Actual expenses we will cover, but we will charge 700 rupees per person the premium for the medical expenses. And this is now entirely our responsibility. We will pay the entire medical expenses. So, selling this add-on cover is most comfortable to you, because your premium of medical expenses add-on could be higher than the basic premium of the policy, because it depends upon the number of workers as well as the limit selected by the insurer. So this is first one, medical expenses. Second one is occupational disease. This is add-on cover with our policy. We charge additional premium of 50% of the basic rate to cover the occupational disease. Now the question is, what is occupational disease? If a person is engaged in any specific job over a period of time, he may suffer the consequences of that particular job. He may suffer the diseases like skin disease, infrared radiation, infection due to contamination, hearing impairment, lung cancer. Because the nature of work may cause this kind of disease. Say suppose there is a textile mill and one worker is working on the spinning section since last 8 years. Now when he is spinning the cotton, dust particles are in the air. When he is breathing, dust particles are inhaled by him. So over a period of time, he suffered bronchitis or asthma. So this is a disease which he suffered because of his nature of work. Means it is related to his occupation. If he was working any other job, this disease may not have happened. So this is called occupational disease. The nature of disease related to the occupation of the worker is called occupational disease. So this is covered by an add-on by charging 50% additional premium. And the third add-on cover is insured liability for contractors and subcontractors of employees. Means if a contractor is having more than one project, another project is handled by a subcontractor and his workers or employees are working on it, both the contracts or all the projects can be included in one policy and the risk of all the workers can be covered, provided the subcontractor is declaring the information, that is number of the workers and the wages paid to the workers accurately, then only the salary cover will be given. Because both the things are important to calculate the premium, both the details are required and he has to submit muster roll and wage register for that purpose. If he is able to submit, this add-on cover can be given, nothing wrong. So basic premium plus add-on premium, this is the way how the premium of this policy will be calculated. Let's come to the second part, how the amount of compensation will be calculated. So for premium calculation you require 4 things. But for calculating the compensation you need only 3 things. What nature of injury the worker has suffered? It is death, disability, permanent or partial or injury. What is this? Secondly, what is his monthly wages? And third is the relevant factor. This relevant factor is available with the insurance company in the tariff as well as in the Employee Compensation Act. So this has to be picked up from there only. But the detail required from the employer or the employee is nature of injury and the monthly wages. That's all. So when all these 3 things are there, the amount of compensation can be calculated. But while calculating the amount of compensation, this is the most important thing, that there is no distinction between an adult and a minor worker with respect to the amount of compensation. Everybody is getting it? If there is any doubt, they can ask me. किसी को कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा तो पूछ सकते हैं. अगर ऐसा कुछ भी लगे कि this is only a one-way traffic, that is not the case. Everything has to be explained. Anytime, if there is any doubt, you can ask me. So when I say there is no distinction between an adult and a minor worker, that means the age of worker may be 14 years, 16 years, less than 18 years. Still the compensation will be paid if he has suffered any accidental injury during the working hours. Or even the age of the worker may be 65 or 70. So there is no distinction between an adult and a minor worker with respect to the amount of compensation. This is a legal provision as per Act. If you have violated the law of hiring the worker who is not adult, who is a minor, who is less than 18 years, that's your fault. For that you can be punished by some law, by other law. But if the worker has suffered any injury or death or disability due to accident, this act provides the amount of compensation because this is a social security legislation. This will not make any distinction on account of age. Because when the Workmen Compensation Act was formulated, that time, that compulsion was not there, that the age of person should be 18 years. Or it was not so strictly enforced. Today it is strictly enforced and the Labour Commission are inquiring in many of the factory if the worker is less than 18 years. So as the employer can be fined, that can be prosecuted, there could be penalty on that. But still compensation is paid. So three things are required: nature of injury, monthly wages and relevant factor. Now what is this relevant factor? How this relevant factor will decide the amount of compensation? I'll show you the relevant factor. This is applicable to the death. This is based on the two things only: age of the worker and the wage of the worker. Age according to the date of birth, wage according to the amount paid by the employer or the contractor. So suppose the age is 30 years and wages is 15,000 per month and the person died due to accident during the working hours. So what is the relevant factor? This is 207.98 and the amount of compensation payable is 15,59,850. Now either the Commissioner of Workmen Compensation is calculating this award, or insurance company is calculating, or employer is calculating, employer or contractor, or even the workman is calculating. The amount would be same. There would be no difference even of single rupees. And this amount has to be paid. There could be no appeal against it. If the workman has died during the course of employment by an accident, his age was 30 years, he was paid 15,000 rupees per month by the contractor, the amount of compensation payable to the dependents of the workers would be 15,59,850. Here, I have to explain two more things. This table starts from the age of 16 years, means the minors are included. It goes up to 65 years. Now suppose the person is of 15 years, still this 16-year formula would be applied. And of the worker is 70 years, still the 65 years would apply. Second thing, lower is the age, higher is the compensation. Higher is the age, lower is the compensation. If a person of 16 years is dying during the working hours due to an accident, the amount payable is 17,14,050. And this is the highest compensation amount in case of death. And if the age is 65 or 70, the amount payable is 7,45,275. In case of death, I am repeating the word death again and again because this is formula applicable for the death only. So that is the way relevant factor is taken from the tariff as well as from the act. This is the amount of compensation calculated on the basis of relevant factor and we just have to pick up from it. Another case is of permanent disability. Permanent total disability. In case of permanent total disability also 100% compensation is payable. But the amount of compensation payable in case of permanent total disability is always higher than the death. Always higher than the death. Now you may ask why this is so. Because in case of death, the workman is no more. The amount of compensation is payable to his dependents only, his or her dependents. But in case of permanent total disability, the workman himself is disabled totally, permanently. He may not be able to earn his wages or livelihood. So first of all, compensation is required for himself, then for his dependents. So obviously the amount has to be higher. So here in case you will see the compensation for permanent total disabled man, if the workman was of 16 years, here the amount is 20,56,860. That means this is higher than the death case. And this is the highest amount of compensation payable for permanent total disablement. Suppose the workman is of 50 years. So the relevant factor would be 153.09 and the amount payable would be 13,77,810. So we just have to pick up the amount of this. Everything is calculated. Court will also do the same job. Insurance company will do the same job. Employer will also do the same job. Workman can also, if he is literate, he can find out. He can check what compensation he will get. If his age is 50, wages is 15,000 per month, he will not get more than 13,77,810. So this is the way how the amount of compensation is calculated. But let us see how the formula would apply. So suppose the workman died during the working hours. The formula says 50% of the monthly wages of the deceased workman multiplied with the relevant factor. Minimum amount has to be 1,20,000, maximum as per the relevant factor table. In case of death. In case of death resulting from injury, the amount of compensation shall be equal to 50% of the monthly wages of the deceased workman multiplied with the relevant factor. And in case of permanent total disablement, here the compensation has to be higher. Here the formula is 60% of the monthly wages of the injured workman multiplied with the relevant factors. And here the minimum compensation has to be 1,40,000. Minimum, maximum as per the table. So the difference is in case of death 50% of the monthly wages and in case of permanent total disability 60% of the monthly wages. So permanent total disability refers to when you are completely disabled for the rest of your life due to illness and injuries because of which you can no longer work and earn money. For example, loss of limb. Suppose both eyes are gone, both legs are gone, both hands are gone, one leg, one hand is gone. Paralysis. Permanent total disability means which cannot be recovered. Total, forever. Now how the compensation will be calculated? See the formula. Say suppose a workman of my factory who was 46 years of age, he was getting 15,000 rupees per month, died due to accident during the working hours. Now 46 years was the age and 15,000 was the wages. Come back to the table. This is 46, this is relevant factor, this is the amount of compensation in case the wages is 15,000. So 46 means 166.29, amount of compensation would be 12,47,175. Come back, same thing. 166.29, 12,47,175. Since this amount is more than 1,20,000, this higher one will be paid. Maximum amount payable in case of death is 17.14 if the age is lesser. In case of permanent disablement, it is 20,56,860. So the simple calculation is there. Take another example. Say suppose I am a small shopkeeper, I have a grocery shop. I have a worker for cleaning and opening of the shop. His age is 30 years, but I am paying him only 3,000 rupees. Now he died in the shop. Maybe say some running fan fallen on his head and he immediately died at the spot. Now since he died due to an accident during the working hours, so this is my responsibility to pay the compensation. Now how the compensation will be calculated? His age is 30 years, his wages is only 3,000 per month, and the formula of the death is 50% of the wages. So 50% of 3,000 is only 15,100. And relevant factor for the person of 30 years is only 207.98. This amount we will not take because this is for the 15,000 rupees per month basis. His wages is only 3,000. So 11 factor is 207.98. 207.98 is multiplied with the 1500 rupees. The amount of compensation payable is 3,11,970. Since this is more than 1,20,000, we will pay him 3,11,970. Simple calculation. And suppose this man has not died, he lost both the eyes, or both the hands, or both the legs, or one eye, one hand. Means he suffered permanent total disability. What difference would be here? This 50 will become 60 only. Wages will remain the same, relevant factor will remain the same according to his age, but the amount of compensation will become 60%. So 60% of the 3,000 means 1,800. 1,800 multiplied by 207.98 would be paid. That's all. So there is no distinction between an adult and a minor worker. Now the permanent total disability would be under these all circumstances: absolute deafness, very severe disfigurement, loss of sight and unable to work, amputation of one leg, one foot or one other limb, loss of hand and foot, loss of both hands, 100% is there. Compensation for permanent partial disablement. Partial disablement means one eye is lost, one hand is lost, one leg is lost. So that's disability will be certified by the doctor. What is the percentage of disability? Because this is permanent. It could be 90%, it could be 9%, it could be 5%, any percentage. Suppose it is 40%, the 40% compensation will be paid. Suppose this is 5% only, the 5% compensation will be paid. All these examples could be there, but the disability certificate will be issued by the registered doctor. Only on that basis the compensation will be decided. Now the compensation to be deposited with the Commissioner of Workmen Compensation Code. Neither the insurance company nor the employer will directly pay the compensation to the workman or to his family. This will be deposited with the Commissioner of Workmen Compensation, and there from the receipt of deposit with the Commissioner shall be a sufficient proof of discharge of the employer's liability. There could be a temporary disablement. Temporary disablement means, suppose I met with an accident, I am a worker, and I suffered fractures, multiple fractures in my both the legs. So these fractures are curable by incurring the cost on the medical treatment. Maybe it may take 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, 8 months, but it is recoverable. This is not permanent, this is temporary. For that purpose, the medical expenses add-on cover is required. So here, the compensation would be equal to 25% of monthly wages of the employee. And then mode of payment, it will go through the Commissioner of Workmen Compensation. But this kind of calculator is provided to all the branches. They can calculate the premium simply. Policy has certain exclusions, and these exclusions are very important. Reason being, in 100% cases, the compensation is not paid. But the exclusions only can stop the compensation, otherwise it is paid. So first of all, any injury which does not result in a fatality or partial disablement for a period exceeding 3 days. For 3 days, if there is any injury, nothing will be paid. That will be excluded from the policy. First 3 days of disablement, where the total disablement is less than 28 days. You are welcome, sir.